Ambassador Crystal stood in the observation deck of the Galactic Council station, watching the human ship approach. His four arms trembled slightly, and his scales had turned a pale shade of blue, a sign of deep unease among his species, the Velthari. "They are early," he said to his assistant, a young Velthari named Sin. "By 3 standard minutes," Sin confirmed, checking her data pad. "Humans are always early or exactly on time, never late." Let out a long breath. He had been preparing for this meeting for 6 rotations of his home world. The humans wanted to negotiate mining rights in the Kepler Belt, a rich asteroid field that fell within Velthari space. It should have been a simple matter. The Velthari needed allies, and the humans had technology they wanted. But nothing was simple when dealing with humans. "Have you studied the briefing materials?" Crystal asked. "Yes, Ambassador." Sin's scales had also turned pale. "I have read every report about human negotiations. I understand why you are worried." "Then you know about the Rylax incident." Sin nodded slowly. The humans promised to defend the Rylax colony for 50 of their years in exchange for fuel rights. When the Korthax Empire attacked in year 47, the humans sent their entire Third Fleet. They lost 8,000 soldiers defending a species they barely knew. 8,000 dead, Crystal repeated, for a promise made by leaders who were no longer alive. The human commander said only 5 words when asked why: "We gave our word." The human ship docked with a soft thump. Crystal straightened his robes and tried to calm his racing hearts. He had negotiated with dozens of species across the galaxy. The Mendari, who lied as easily as they breathed. The collective of Zos, who changed their demands every hour. The Silicon Mines, who processed every word for hidden meanings. None of them frightened him like humans did. The airlock opened, and 3 humans walked out. The one in front was a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She wore a simple dark suit with no decorations except a small pin on her collar, a circle with a line through it, the symbol of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. "Ambassador Crystal," she said, extending her hand. "I am Chief Negotiator Sarah Chen. Thank you for meeting with us." Crystal took her hand carefully. Human greetings involved physical contact, which still felt strange to him. "Chief Negotiator Chen, welcome to Council Station. May I offer you refreshments before we begin?" "That's very kind, but we'd prefer to start right away if that's acceptable." Chen smiled, but her eyes remained focused and serious. "We know your time is valuable." Felt his scales shift color again. This was another human trait that unsettled him, their directness. Most species spent hours on pleasantries and indirect conversation before getting to business. Humans simply said what they meant. They moved to the negotiation chamber, a round room with a large table in the center. Sat on one side with Sin and 2 advisors. Chen sat across from him with her 2 assistants, a young man and a woman who both carried data tablets. "Let me begin by stating our position clearly," Chen said. "We want mining rights to sectors 7 through 12 of the Kepler Belt. In exchange, we are prepared to offer you access to our new energy shield technology, plus a mutual defense agreement for the next 100 Earth years." Crystal's advisors shifted in their seats. The energy shield technology was valuable, very valuable. The Velthari had been trying to develop something similar for generations. "That is a generous offer," Crystal said carefully. "However, those sectors contain rare minerals that we ourselves need. Perhaps we could discuss sectors 1 through 6 instead." Chen shook her head. "We've surveyed the belt. Sectors 1 through 6 don't have what we need, but I understand your concern." She turned to her assistant. "Marcus, show them the amended proposal." The young man placed a data tablet on the table. Crystal picked it up and read the screen. His eyes widened. "You would give us 20% of all minerals extracted from our sectors." "That's correct," Chen said. "And we would commit to training your engineers in extraction techniques at no additional cost. our word on both counts. There it was, that phrase, our word. Had heard stories about what those two words meant when spoken by a human negotiator. It was not like a promise from other species. When the Minbari said they promised something, it meant they would try if it was convenient. When the collective of Zos made a commitment, it lasted only until their council changed their minds. But when humans gave their word, it became something almost sacred, something unbreakable. I would like to discuss this with my advisors, Crystal said. Of course, Chen stood up. We'll step outside, take all the time you need. When the humans had left the room, Crystal turned to his team. What do you think? His senior advisor, an old Velthari named Torx, spoke first. The offer is better than we expected, much better, but Ambassador, I am concerned. About what? About what they will expect in return. Humans do not simply give things away. If they are offering this much, they must want something more than mining rights. Sin cleared her throat. I have been researching human negotiation history. In 73% of cases, their initial offer is their actual offer. They do not play games like other species do. That cannot be right, Torx said. Everyone starts high and negotiates down. It is the nature of trade. Not humans, Sin said. They consider it dishonest to ask for more than they actually want. When they make an offer, they mean it. Sat back in his chair thinking. This was the problem with humans. They were impossible to read because they did not operate like anyone else. With other species, you could assume they were hiding something, that their first offer was just a starting point. You could push back, demand more, and eventually find a middle ground. With humans, you never knew if pushing back would make them simply walk away, taking their offer with them. There is something else, Sin said quietly, something I found in the old records. What? 50 years ago, our government negotiated a trade agreement with humans. It included a clause that we would provide them with water from our ocean worlds in exchange for medical technology. Crystal nodded. I remember, but that agreement ended after 10 years. Yes, because our council decided to break the agreement early. They found a better deal with the Minbari. Sin paused. The humans never said anything about it. They simply accepted our decision and left. But Ambassador, do you know what happened to that medical technology? Felt cold, what? The Minbari never delivered. They made promises and broke them as they always do. Meanwhile, our people on the outer colonies continued to suffer from the plague that the human medicine would have cured. Thousands died. And the humans? They would have honored the full agreement. They always do. We broke our word to them and we paid the price for it. Sin looked down at her data pad. I do not think they will offer us another chance easily. This negotiation is more important than just mining rights, Ambassador. It is a chance to rebuild trust with a species that never forgets a broken promise. Crystal stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the human ship hanging in the darkness of space, such a small vessel. Humans were not the largest species, nor the strongest, nor the most technologically advanced. In many ways, they were unremarkable. But they had something that no other species in the galaxy possessed, a reputation. When humans made a deal, they kept it. When they gave their word, it was as solid as the stars themselves. And that made them the most dangerous negotiators in the known universe. Bring them back in, Crystal said. I want to hear more about this defense agreement. Chief Negotiator Sarah Chen sat perfectly still as the Velthari ambassador returned to the room. She had learned long ago that patience was the most powerful tool in any negotiation. While other species filled silences with chatter and nervous energy, humans waited. Ambassador Crystal settled into his seat across the table. His scales had shifted from pale blue to a deeper shade, though Chen wasn't entirely sure what that meant. The briefings had told her that Velthari scales changed color with their emotions, but the exact meanings were still being studied. Chief Negotiator Chen, Crystal began, my advisors and I have discussed your offer. We find it acceptable in principle. However, we have some questions about the defense agreement. Please ask them. You mentioned a 100-year commitment. What exactly would that involve? Chen nodded to her assistant, Marcus, who pulled up a document on his tablet. If any hostile force attacks Velthari territory, Earth will send military support within 30 standard days. We commit a minimum of 2 battle groups, which includes 12 capital ships and supporting vessels. This commitment remains in effect for the full 100 years, regardless of any changes in Earth government or policy. Crystal's advisor, the old one called Torx, leaned forward. Regardless of changes in government, how can you promise such a thing? Your leaders may be replaced. Your policies may shift. Chen smiled slightly. That's a good question, and I understand why you would ask it. Most species cannot make commitments that outlast their current leadership, but Earth operates differently. She folded her hands on the table. When the United Earth government was formed 200 years ago, our founders understood that their greatest challenge would not be technology or resources. It would be trust. How do you build trust with species who have been deceived by each other for thousands of years? The Velthari were listening intently now. Chen continued. They decided that Earth's word would be absolute, not just strong, not just reliable, absolute. They wrote it into our founding charter. Any agreement made by an authorized Earth representative becomes binding on all future governments forever. Breaking such an agreement is considered treason. Treason? Crystal's scales shifted again. That seems extreme. It is extreme. It's meant to be. In our entire history as a unified species, no Earth government has ever broken a formal agreement with an alien species. Not once. The penalty is too severe, and the shame would be too great. Torx shook his head slowly. But what if circumstances change? What if keeping a promise becomes too costly? Then we pay the cost. Chen's voice was calm but firm. 30 years ago, we promised the Rylax that we would defend their colony for 50 years. When the Korthax attacked, we had just finished a war of our own. Our fleets were damaged. Our people were tired. Our economists said we couldn't afford another conflict. She paused. We sent our ships anyway. 8,000 humans died defending that colony. When it was over, the Korthax asked our commander why we had come, why we had sacrificed so much for a species that couldn't help us in return. What did he say? Sin asked quietly. He said we gave our word, that's all. We gave our word. Chen leaned back in her chair. The Rylax are still alive today because of that decision, and every species in the galaxy knows that when humans make a promise, we keep it. The room fell silent. Crystal exchanged glances with his advisors. Chen could see them processing what she had said, trying to understand a concept that seemed foreign to everything they knew about galactic politics. Finally, Crystal spoke. Chief Negotiator Chen, I must be honest with you. We are not used to dealing with a species like yours. In my experience, every promise comes with hidden conditions. Every agreement has escape clauses. Every word has multiple meanings. I know, Chen said, and I understand why you would be suspicious. Your people have been dealing with the Mendari and others for centuries. You've learned that trust is dangerous. Then you understand our difficulty. Chen nodded. I do, but I want you to understand ours as well. Every time we make a promise, we know we might have to die for it. Every agreement we sign could cost us ships, soldiers, resources. We do not make commitments lightly. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. When I became a negotiator, my grandmother gave me one piece of advice. She said, Sarah, never promise anything you're not willing to die for, because someday you might have to. Your grandmother was wise, Crystal said. She was a soldier. She fought in the defense of the Rylax colony. She lost her arm there. Chen turned back to face the ambassador. She told me that the moment she understood what it meant to be human was when she watched her friends die for a species they had never met. She said it was the proudest moment of her life. Crystal was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "What do humans gain from this? You cannot benefit from dying for strangers." "That's where you're wrong," Chen said. "We gain everything. We gain trust. We gain allies who know they can count on us. We gain a reputation that makes our enemies think twice before attacking. Most importantly, we gain our own respect." She returned to her seat. "Ambassador, I'm not going to pretend that humans are saints. We have our flaws. We can be stubborn, impatient, and sometimes too aggressive. But when we give our word, we keep it. That's not a strategy or a negotiation tactic. It's who we are." Torx, the old advisor, spoke up. "I have studied your species for many years. I always assumed this reputation was propaganda, something you created to gain advantage in negotiations. You are saying it is real." "Test it," Chen said simply. "Make this agreement with us. In 50 years, in 100 years, see if we keep our promise. See if we defend your worlds when they're attacked. See if we deliver every bit of technology we promised. When you see that we do, you'll understand." "And if we break our word to you?" Crystal asked. "As our ancestors did 50 years ago." Chen's expression didn't change, but something hardened in her eyes. "Then we will remember. We will not attack you or seek revenge. That's not our way, but we will remember. And the next time you come to us for help, we will ask ourselves if your word means anything. Trust is hard to build and easy to destroy, Ambassador. That's true for any species." The room fell silent again. Crystal looked at his advisors, then back at Chen. "I believe you," he said finally. "I don't fully understand you, but I believe you." "That's a start." "I have one more question." Crystal folded his forearms across his chest. "Why do humans place such importance on keeping promises? Where does this come from?" Chen thought for a moment. "When we were a young species, before we reached the stars, we were divided into many nations. Those nations fought each other constantly. They made treaties and broke them. They promised peace and then made war. Millions died because of broken words." She shook her head slowly. "When we finally unified, our leaders looked at our history and saw a pattern. Every great conflict, every war, every genocide could be traced back to broken promises. They decided that if humanity was going to survive among the stars, we had to become something better. We had to become a species that kept its word." "And you succeeded." "Not at first. There were those who thought it was foolish, that we should be more flexible, more willing to break agreements when it suited us. But over time, we learned. We learned that our word was worth more than any weapon, any technology, any resource. It became our greatest strength." Chen smiled. "Now, Ambassador, shall we finish this negotiation? I believe we have a deal to make." The negotiations continued for 3 more days. Chen found the Velthari to be careful and thorough, asking questions about every detail of the agreement. They wanted to know exactly what the humans would do, when they would do it, and how they would do it. They seemed almost desperate to find hidden clauses or secret conditions. There were none. On the 3rd day, they finalized the agreement. Mining rights for sectors 7 through 12. Energy shield technology transfer. 20% of extracted minerals returned to the Velthari. Full training for Velthari engineers. And the 100-year defense pact. When it came time to sign, Crystal hesitated with his stylus hovering over the document. "Is something wrong?" Chen asked. "I am thinking about what my assistant told me," Crystal said. "About the agreement our ancestors broke 50 years ago. About the thousands who died because the Mindari did not keep their promises." "I heard about that. My own grandmother was one of them." Crystal's voice was heavy with emotion. "She died on the outer colonies from the plague that human medicine would have cured. I was just a child." Chen said nothing. She understood that some things needed to be spoken, not responded to. I have spent my career negotiating with species who view promises as suggestions, Crystal continued. I have watched leaders lie and cheat and break their word without shame. I had come to believe that this was simply how the universe worked. That trust was a weakness to be exploited. He looked up at Chen. And then I met humans, a species who would rather die than break a promise, a species who sends thousands to their deaths for an agreement made by leaders they never knew, a species whose word is absolute. We're not perfect, Ambassador. No, but you are honest. In a galaxy full of liars, you are honest. Crystal pressed his stylus to the document, adding his mark. I am signing this agreement not because I trust you. I am signing it because I want to learn to trust you. I want my people to have the chance my grandmother never had. Chen signed her own name beneath his. Then let's make sure this agreement is the beginning of something better for both our peoples. They stood and shook hands, a human custom that Crystal was beginning to appreciate. There was something meaningful about physical contact at the moment of agreement, a reminder that deals were made between living beings, not just governments. Chief Negotiator Chen, Crystal said, I have one final question, a personal one. Go ahead. Do you ever fear making promises, knowing what they might cost you? Chen considered the question carefully. Every time, she admitted. Every time I make a commitment on behalf of Earth, I know that I might be sending someone's son or daughter to die for it. That's a heavy burden. How do you bear it? By never promising anything I wouldn't die for myself, she smiled. My grandmother's advice, I've never forgotten it. Crystal nodded slowly. I think I understand now. For humans, keeping your word is not just about honor or reputation. It is about being worthy of the trust others place in you. Yes, that's exactly it. Chen gathered her documents and prepared to leave. Ambassador, I hope this is the beginning of a long friendship between our peoples, and I give you my word, Earth will honor every part of this agreement, every year, every clause, every promise. I believe you, Crystal said, and for the first time since the negotiations began, he meant it completely. The news of the human Velthari agreement spread quickly through the Galactic Council. Within days, ambassadors from a dozen species were requesting meetings with Chief Negotiator Chen. Some wanted their own agreements with Earth. Others simply wanted to observe, to try to understand the strange species that treated promises like sacred law. Chen met with as many as she could. Each time, she explained Earth's position clearly and directly. Each time, she made only promises she knew humanity could keep. And each time, she watched the other species struggle to understand. The Mendari ambassador was particularly confused. You mean to tell me, he said, his multiple tongues flickering with disbelief, that if you promise something, you simply do it, without looking for ways to avoid the commitment, without renegotiating when circumstances change? That's correct. But that's insane. What if you promise something and then realize you made a mistake? What if the agreement becomes too costly to maintain? Then we pay the cost, Chen said calmly, or we don't make the promise in the first place. The Mendari ambassador shook his head. I have been negotiating for 200 years. I have never encountered such a ridiculous approach to diplomacy. And yet, Chen said, here you are asking for an agreement with Earth. I wonder why that is. The ambassador had no answer to that. In the weeks that followed, Chen signed 3 more agreements. One with the collective of Zas, who wanted access to human agricultural technology. One with the Silicon Mines, who were interested in joint research projects. And one with a small species called the Quinn, who simply wanted a promise that Earth would not attack them. Each agreement was different, but they all had one thing in common. They were absolute. No hidden clauses, no escape routes, no secret conditions, just clear promises that Earth intended to keep forever. Ambassador Crystal watched these developments with growing amazement. He had expected the other species to be suspicious of Earth, to demand proof of their reliability. Instead, they seemed almost eager to make deals, as if they had been waiting for a trustworthy partner their entire existence. "They are desperate," he said to Sin one evening, as they watched another species leaving Chen's negotiation chamber. "Desperate for someone they can count on." "Can you blame them?" Sin replied. "In a galaxy where everyone lies, the one honest species is worth its weight in gold." More than gold. The Quinn Agreement was particularly interesting. They asked for nothing but a promise of non-aggression. And they got it, a 100-year promise that humans will never attack them. Sin shook her head. Such a simple thing, such a small request, and yet no other species in the galaxy would make such a promise and mean it. Crystal nodded slowly. "I begin to understand why human negotiators are feared. It is not because they are clever or manipulative. It is because they are genuine. When you cannot trust anyone, the one person you can trust becomes the most powerful being in the room." He looked out at the stars, thinking about his grandmother, about the plague that had taken her, about the broken promise that had let it happen. 50 years ago, the Velthari had chosen the Mendari over the humans. They had chosen lies over truth, flexibility over commitment. It had cost them everything. Now, finally, they had a chance to make a different choice, to align themselves with a species that meant what they said and did what they promised. It was frightening in its simplicity. It was also the most hopeful thing Crystal had experienced in his long career. 6 months later, Crystal was back on his home world when the attack came. A Korthax raiding fleet, 12 ships strong, appeared at the edge of Velthari space without warning. They demanded the surrender of 3 outer colonies and threatened to destroy them if the Velthari resisted. The Velthari defense fleet was too far away to respond in time. The colonies had minimal defenses. It looked like a massacre was inevitable. Was in his office when his assistant burst in with the news. "Ambassador, the Korthax are attacking. Our colonies at Theta 7 are under siege." "How long until our fleet can arrive?" "At least 10 days at maximum speed. The colonies will be destroyed long before then." Felt his heart sink. This was the nightmare scenario, the kind of attack that had devastated his people before. The Korthax knew the Velthari couldn't defend themselves. They would take what they wanted and leave nothing behind. And then his communicator buzzed, a message from Council Station. "Ambassador Crystal," the message read, "this is Chief Negotiator Chen. We've detected the Korthax attack on your colonies. Per our defense agreement, the Third Fleet has been dispatched. Estimated arrival time, 18 hours. Hold on, we're coming." Read the message 3 times, unable to believe it. The agreement was only 6 months old. Earth had no obligation to respond so quickly. They could have waited, sent a smaller force, found reasons to delay. Instead, they had sent their Third Fleet. The same fleet that had defended the Rylax all those years ago, the most decorated battle group in human history. For him, for his people, because they had given their word. The Battle of Theta 7 lasted 4 hours. The Korthax, expecting easy prey, were unprepared for the human ships that appeared out of nowhere. The Third Fleet hit them hard and fast, driving them back from the colonies with ruthless efficiency. When it was over, 11 of the 12 Korthax ships had been destroyed or disabled. The 12th fled into deep space, carrying word of the defeat back to the Korthax Empire. The colonies were saved. Not a single civilian was lost. Crystal traveled to Theta 7 as soon as he could, arriving just as the human fleet was preparing to leave. He found Admiral James Morrison, commander of the Third Fleet, overseeing repairs to one of his damaged ships. "Admiral Morrison," Crystal said, approaching the human, "I wanted to thank you personally. You saved my people." Morrison turned to face him. He was an older man with gray hair and a face lined with years of service. "No thanks necessary, Ambassador. We have an agreement." Yes, but you responded so quickly. You came with your entire fleet. You risked your ships and your soldiers for us. That's what the agreement says. Morrison seemed puzzled by Crystal's surprise. We committed to sending support within 30 days. We can usually do it faster than that. Most species would have found reasons to delay. They would have sent less than promised. They would have negotiated for more before acting. Morrison shook his head. That's not how we do things. Your people were in danger. We had a promise to keep. Everything else is just details. Was silent for a moment, struggling to find words. Finally, he said, Admiral, I have spent my entire career dealing with species who view promises as suggestions, who calculate the cost of everything and commit to nothing. Meeting humans has changed me. Changed you how? I used to believe that trust was a weakness, that the strong survived by being flexible, by breaking their word when it suited them. Now I understand that the opposite is true. Trust is strength. Keeping your word is power. Morrison smiled slightly. That's a lesson my grandfather taught me. He said, a man is only as good as his word. Took me a while to understand what he meant. And now I know. It means that what we promise we are. Our words define us. Break them and we break ourselves. Crystal extended his hand, a human gesture that still felt strange to him. Admiral, I give you my word that the Velthari will honor our agreement with Earth. Every year, every clause, every promise. Morrison took his hand and shook it firmly. I believe you, Ambassador, and that means more than you know. When Crystal returned to Council Station, he found that word of the battle had already spread. The other species were talking about the human response, about the speed and force with which they had defended their allies. Did you see how fast they came? A Mindari ambassador was saying in the council chamber. 18 hours. They traveled half the sector in 18 hours. And they sent their best fleet, another added. Not a token force. Their actual third fleet, the same ships that destroyed the Korthax Armada 30 years ago. Because of a promise, someone else said, just because they promised they would. Listened to the chatter with a strange sense of pride. These species were beginning to understand what he had learned, what it meant to deal with humans, what it meant to have their word. He found Chief Negotiator Chen in her office, reviewing documents for another negotiation. She looked up when he entered. Ambassador Crystal, I heard you were at Theta 7. I wanted to see it for myself, to watch humans keep their word. He sat down across from her. It was everything I hoped it would be. Chen smiled. Admiral Morrison speaks highly of you. He said you traveled all the way there just to thank him. I did, though I think he was confused by my gratitude. He probably was. For humans, keeping a promise isn't something special. It's just what we do. Crystal nodded slowly. That is the most remarkable thing about your species. You do not see your own uniqueness. You do not understand how extraordinary you are. We're just humans, Ambassador. No, you are humans who keep their word. In a galaxy full of liars, that makes you something close to sacred. Crystal leaned forward. I came to tell you something. After what happened at Theta 7, the Velthari Council has decided to propose a deeper alliance with Earth. Not just defense and trade, a full partnership. Chen raised an eyebrow. That's a significant step. It is. Many on the council were hesitant. They worried about committing too deeply to a single species. But I told them about Admiral Morrison, about what he said when I thanked him. He said, that's not how we do things. As if keeping a promise was the most natural thing in the universe. For us, it is. I know, and that is why we want to be your partners, because you have shown us what we could become, what we should become. Crystal stood up. Chief Negotiator Chen, I give you my word that the Velthari will honor this partnership for as long as our species exists, every year, every generation, every promise. Chen stood as well, extending her hand. Then let's build something lasting, Ambassador, together. They shook hands, and Crystal felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Hope for a future where promises meant something, where trust was not a weakness but a strength, where species could work together without fear of betrayal. All because of humans. Simple, stubborn, remarkably honest humans who would rather die than break their word. The most dangerous negotiators in the galaxy. And now the Velthari's closest friends. In the years that followed, the Human-Velthari alliance became a model for cooperation across the galaxy. Other species watched with amazement as the two peoples worked together, each keeping their promises without fail. Trade flourished. Technology was shared. Defense was coordinated. And slowly, other species began to change. The collective of Zos, after witnessing decades of human reliability, reformed their entire political system. They created new laws requiring all commitments to be honored, regardless of changes in council membership. It wasn't perfect. Old habits died hard, but it was a start. The Quinn, once a frightened species hiding on the edges of known space, grew confident under human protection. They began trading with other species, knowing that their human allies would stand by them if anything went wrong. Even the Mendari, masters of deception for thousands of years, started to question their ways. A new generation of leaders emerged, arguing that perhaps trust was more valuable than trickery. They faced enormous resistance from traditionalists, but the movement grew. All because of a simple truth that humans had discovered long ago: keeping your word was power. Crystal, now elderly by Velthari standards, wrote about these changes in his final memoir. He called it The Promise of Humanity, and it became required reading at diplomatic academies across the galaxy. In the final chapter, he described his first meeting with Chief Negotiator Chen all those years ago. He wrote about his fear, his suspicion, his inability to understand how any species could truly mean what they said. And then he wrote about what he had learned. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy, he wrote. They are not the smartest or the most technologically advanced. In many ways they are unremarkable, but they possess something no other species has: absolute honesty in their commitments. When a human gives their word, they keep it, not because they have to, not because it benefits them, but because they believe deep in their souls that their word is sacred, that breaking it would be breaking themselves. This simple belief has changed the galaxy. It has shown us what trust can accomplish. It has given us hope for a future where promises mean something. It has made us all, in our own small ways, a little more human. I have spent my life negotiating with every species in known space. I have faced liars, cheaters, and manipulators beyond count. But I have never been more frightened than I was in that first meeting with Sarah Chen. Because I knew, from the moment she spoke, that she meant every word. And in a universe full of deception, honesty is the most terrifying thing of all. Alien diplomats fear human negotiators, because their word is absolutely unbreakable. And they are right to fear, because in that unbreakable word lies the power to change everything. The memoir ended there. Crystal died 2 years later, surrounded by family and friends. At his request, human representatives attended his funeral, standing alongside Velthari mourners in a display of partnership that would have been unthinkable a century before. Chief Negotiator Chen, long retired, was among them. She read a passage from the Earth Charter at the ceremony, the same words that had guided humanity for generations. "Our word is our bond," she read. "What we promise, we keep. What we commit, we honor. This is the foundation of our species. This is the source of our strength. And this is what we offer to all who would stand with us, a promise that will never be broken, a word that will never fail." When she finished, the Velthari present performed their traditional gesture of respect, crossing all 4 arms over their hearts. The humans responded with their own tradition, a simple bow of the head. 2 species, 2 cultures, 1 promise. The unbreakable word of humanity had brought them together, and nothing in the galaxy would tear them apart. Because that was the lesson humans had taught the universe. In a cosmos full of chaos and betrayal, the one thing that lasts forever is a promise kept. And humans always kept their promises.